Good afternoon. Welcome to Conversations in American Democracy. My name's Ken Frasier. We're going to go around the room, introduce ourselves. We'll start down there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kathy Riker-Nalowski.
Lee Wessel,
Kathy Rotundo.
Marla Alger,
Kurt McCauley.
Cathy Moon.
Phyllis Ruther.
Mark Webb.
Kathy Duffy.
Sherry Frazier.
Elaine Deardorff-Beck. Susan Noble.
Lots of Kathys around.
There it is, a lot of Kathys.
Always. That's right. Kathy
One in every
Caucus.
corner.
There we go. Can't have too many Kathys.
And Al Rotano.
Yes.
Al Rotondo, thank you, sir, for being here. All right, folks, as always, we're going to have our constitutional reading from Kurt. Bring it to us.
All right, Amendment 17, ratified 4/8/1913.
19 what?
1913. Okay, so what do you think it is? If you don't, somebody should know this. We all know.
After the voting.
We're gonna read it, right?
It was a direct election of senators, okay? I mean, we took it away from them.
Yeah.
Jesus, boy, the best people we could take it away from. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof for 6 years. Each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature.
What does that mean?
What do you mean?
Have the qualifications requisite for the electors of the most numerous branch.
But they put the qualifications up.
They're establishing their own qualifications.
Oh, yeah. for
So
sure.
they get elected, and then they write the requirements to be elected.
That
Well, it
sounds
should
so
come
strange.
first.
Yes.
Yeah.
What an awful thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they don't do things right all the time, and of course, this is one of the things one of the amendments that was done to address some of the problems. Senators,
And is
the
it the
Senate
most
was
numerous
really out of
branch?
control.
Yeah, what was going on in 19, or prior to 1913?
Well,
that
the whole
still-
thing was,
Was that still the progressives and Teddy Roosevelt?
no, that's the beginning of it. This is 1913, it should have been there.
Wait,
But
13.
we're
all
working
kind of-
our way, because the 16th Amendment was to lay and collect taxes.
Right, so we're funding the government. Now we're trying to establish how each state would have a say in the government that we've just funded.
Right, exactly. When vacancies happen in the representation of any state in the Senate, the executive authority of such state shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies, provided that the legislature of any state may empower the executive thereof to make contemporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies by election as legislature may direct. So there's a lot of control out.
Well, that's where we are here in Florida right now with
Right.
Bondi
Right.
got selected, left her seat. No, she was then Moody was put in place by the governor, and then she's up for election this year with us.
Well, a classic example that will tie that into what you're saying is Senator Sonny Bono died. The governor appointed his wife to continue his term, and then she went on to run and get the seat back to keep the seat.
Right.
So the governor actually can appoint in between elections who would be the senator for that, representative for that state.
And I stand
Or
corrected.
does each state
Right.
have their own particular law?
I
That's a
would,
good question.
I'm
Because
not
this
sure.
says the
And I-
legislature of the state may empower the executive
May.
thereof to make temporary appointments. This is saying that the legislature will do it, and you're saying
May.
the governor.
No,
may.
May.
Not must.
must,
Yeah.
may
So
do
in
it.
some states, I think they hold a special election.
They do.
Right.
Called for by the
Governor.
Okay.
So, and I clarify, it was Marco Rubio
Yes.
who was selected to be the Secretary of State, leaving an opening in Florida's Senate position, which the governor appointed Moody, who's up for election this cycle.
And isn't there one on the school board or locally, a gentleman?
He,
If he's
Will
gone or
Furry,
going up?
Furry, but he said no.
No, not Furry.
No, there
somebody
was,
else. The guy that the governor.
the one that's
appointed.
the vacant seat, and they left it vacant for over a year.
Yeah. No.
So he was tapped by the administration to fulfill another
Right.
role, and the governor could have appointed, but didn't.
That's where it reads May.
May.
Little word,
May.
big
Big.
implications.
But right now, there is efforts through some states to rescind that amendment, because the states would like to be able to select their own without elections.
Without election.
But there's a great documentary that explains why the amendment started, and it was because the states were failing to provide representation, blocking the Senate from doing things because there weren't enough for a
Votes.
quorum
Wow.
to move it. And so a group of states, I won't say they were southern states,
But
would delay putting a senator in place, blocking the efforts. And enough states got behind saying, no, you will elect, and it will be transition of power, and there will be someone
Do you
in.
remember the name of the documentary?
It's on PBS, and it's a 15-minute there's a whole series on civics, like Civics 101 through PBS, that talks about a variety of why we are where we are today. Perfect 15-minute soundbite, but in either case,
Okay.
alrighty, folks. Kurt, anything else for us?
No, that's it.
All right. We have a special guest here today, Cathy Moon, who's running for.
School board.
Yay! So I will,
A normal
if there's
person.
no other questions, I'll give our time over to Cathy.
Excellent, thank you. I'm excited to be running for school board here in Flagler, and I'm confident really that I can make a difference for the Flagler students and families. I'd first like to back up a moment and say, well, why did I come to this decision? And it really started very young in my life. In elementary school, my mother was very sick. I was 5, and she was gone for the better part of 2 years. So my dad sometimes had to drop me at school really early, like 2 hours early. And little girls are vulnerable in places where they shouldn't be for 2 hours with no supervision. So fortunately, Mrs. Norman invited me into her classroom, and she said, when your dad has to drop you early, you come in here and sit with me. You can read a book, you know, color, whatever you'd like to do. She'd even brought a comb in so she could comb my hair in case he forgot, which he sometimes did. So she really not only protected me, but, you know, I could have fallen through the cracks right there, but I didn't because she cared. And that wasn't something she got any credit for or put in, you know, some report and was able, but she made a difference in my life, profound difference. And I also had a high school counselor that really made a difference to me. We kind of connected, and I'd stop in once or twice a week, you know, just to chat and see how she's doing in that. And she ended up nominating me to attend a leadership camp during the summer, and that was a week long. And I feel like she saw something in me that I couldn't yet see in myself, and it inspired me to some of the things that I went on to do. So I joined the Future Teachers of America in high school. I went on to Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia. I got my education degree in health and safety education. But I didn't end up teaching because, like many students, I worked part-time while I was in college, and I happened to work for the post office. So I ended up going and forming a career with the Postal Service. I retired from the Postal Service in 2017 and moved to Florida. Like many of us who are here, wanted to be near a grandchild. She lives in Jacksonville, Florida, so this brought us closer to her. And my husband and I started a small business in 2018, which we closed down at the end of 2024. So I started thinking about, you know, I'm still young. And I've got skills and experience and training that could be of value. Is there a place here in my community where I could bring that to use and be of benefit to the entire community? And I started attending school board meetings last fall just to see, you know, what are they doing? Is this a place for me? And the more I attended and the more I dug into their materials, the more people I talked to, the more I came to realize this is a very good fit for me. I've been attending parent-teacher organization meetings, school advisory council meetings. In fact, I've got one of those this evening. School events, festivals, anywhere that I can go to talk to people just like you all, and I'm very grateful that you invited me here to talk today. I've spoken with hundreds of Flagler residents at this point. I've met parents who literally relocated to Flagler because the schools were better here than where they had come from. Parents who were proud of their students. I just shared a video today about the International Baccalaureate program that's run out of Flagler Palm Coast High School. The deadline, for any parents that are listening, the deadline is February 28th if you want to apply for your student. And they went back and had past graduates do little video clips of where they are now, when did they graduate, how have they used it, was the training of value. Really good information if you want to take a look at that. Also, some parents were offering suggestions. I've talked to retired teachers, current teachers, and they love teaching. They're there because it's their passion. The morale is not the best. I hope that we can do something to help improve the morale going forward. And through these conversations with so many people, I've begun to identify some key issues. I want to protect the rights of students to read age-appropriate books from that school library or from the teachers, the shelf in their classroom if that's still permitted. And we have a process here that allows a parent to opt their child out. If I don't want my child to read this book, I can say, my child is not allowed to check this book out. What I can't do is say no child in the school is allowed to check this book out.
There you go.
So we have a workable process that allows a parent, and parents should have, if for whatever reason they feel it's inappropriate, they should have a way to do that. So it protects both the parental rights and the rights of all the other students in the schools. So I will absolutely be someone who's protecting the right to have the books, age-appropriate books.
So, book burning and banning.
Not in my
Not in your
plans.
Okay, because to me, all kids should read 1984 before they graduate from high school.
So that sounds almost like a curriculum choice, which.
Well, my kids did because I homeschooled partially
yes.
and I had them in public school parts of times.
Yes.
But they read good books. But
Good.
now those same books, you can't.
Well, that's what kills me is that so many books that are on these banned lists are ones that were required to read.
Right, when I went through school,
There's
absolutely.
one book on the whole list that I hadn't read, and it was because I didn't want to.
Did you read it then after you found
No,
out?
'cause I wasn't
Because
interested in it.
some
of
folks
them
have
are-
done that. They literally brought those books from the public library for their child to.
The American
look through.
Library Association has gone over the number of 23,800 books that were banned over a 5-year period, and 70% of those came from government and political action groups. Only 16% came from parents.
Wow.
Wow.
So this is really a movement, and it also, the Heritage Foundation was underlying a lot
Oh,
of that.
their list is gigantic.
Right. Wait do you see their new document?
Okay, so I am committed to using my skills and my experience, which I'll share a little bit more about in a minute, to propel Flagler schools to become Florida's best. That's my goal. We're going to make our public schools be the best school for school choice in Flagler County. That is what I hope to do. I've learned of many positive steps in Flagler schools, such as the improving graduation rates. That's an excellent step. And we have robust opportunities for our high school students, for trade, for the aviation. I was just amazed. The International Baccalaureate, the advanced placement courses, the dual enrollment. I mean, just amazing programs, which they refer to as the Diploma Plus. Their goal is that every student not only graduate, but graduate with something that is a step towards where they're going next. There's even an entrepreneurship program, which I thought was fabulous. I even met a couple of kids who came out of that program and have started a very small business down in the Bunnell area. And this is their first step, and I hope they can turn that into something that keeps growing. So I want to see, I've been trained in continuous improvement, so you're looking at any program, and almost always it's not absolutely everything it could be. So you're looking for incremental improvement in anything that is going on. So I will use my skills to help us go from good to great, or if you believe we're great, then we'll go to exceptional. I'll be an advocate for the marginalized communities, like our students who are on individualized education plans, those for whom English is a second language, those who are economically disadvantaged. I learned of a program, an issue with some of our kids not attending anything before kindergarten. So they show up at kindergarten and they're tested and they're not kindergarten ready. And that creates an issue because they are not prepared to sit, they're not prepared to listen, that, you know, how to behave, and certain skills they were expected to come in with. 35% of our kindergarten students did not attend the voluntary pre-kindergarten program that is offered. And only 36% of those students are ready for kindergarten. The students who did attend are far more ready. And there, it's possible, you mentioned homeschooling, depending on what the parent is using, a child can arrive from homeschooling and be kindergarten ready, but these children have generally had no preparation. And not surprisingly, they're behind, right? Fully
Do they ever catch
75,
Do they ever catch
fully
up?
75% of the children who enter kindergarten unprepared never catch up. The testing has been repeated 3rd grade, 8th
Wow.
grade. They remain behind,
That is such a shocking
and they're less
statistic.
likely
It is.
to, they're less likely to even graduate from high school. I mean, it's just, I know, devastating.
There's plenty of people that don't work with their kids. You need to sit down with them every evening. What do we have? What did you do? What are you supposed to read next?
We used to
Negative
call
parent.
them, the kids that came prepared 1,000 book kids.
Ah.
So between the ages of, from birth till 5, their parents had probably read somewhere in the area of 1,000 books to them, which of course is vocabulary.
Absolutely.
Building blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the flow of the language and the sitting and attending and listening. Yeah.
So I still have a lot to learn about that program and other things in the Flagler schools. I didn't move here until 2017. I did not go to school here. My children did not go to school here. So I've been fortunate that a number of really qualified people have stepped up to help me in that learning experience and to help fill in some of the gaps and explain some of these things. And what I want to understand about the voluntary pre-kindergarten and the kids who do not go is, what are the barriers that might be keeping them from attending this program? Is it transportation? Because apparently they don't provide transportation for this
Scheduling.
program. It's a half-day program.
Work conflict.
So if you're working, you know, who's going to pick your child up midday and who's going to care for them? They do offer an after-school program that, according to the Flagler Schools website, is $70 a week. But for some families, that's a problem, especially if they had a family member who was, you know, giving childcare free of charge. So, and some families might simply be unaware. I read another statistic that said in the Flagler schools, I want to say it's 25% of the kids, the families moved here in the last 4 years. So if you have newly arriving families, they don't know what we offer here. They, you know, they're trying to get up to speed. But the more I learn, the more I need to talk to community members. So I'm glad to be here today for that opportunity. And I also am asking if you'd be willing to do something at your home, at a local coffee shop, wherever, where you'd invite in a few people, and we just, very casual, we sit and we talk about what's been their experience here, what are their concerns, what would they like to see, or if you belong to another group that might be willing to allow me to come in and speak. Remember that school board positions are nonpartisan, so I don't come with any partisan agenda. I would really welcome that opportunity. The next thing that I find that people want to know about my candidacy is she actually qualified? Seems like a nice lady, but is she qualified? Well, first let me say that every decision I make when I'm on the school board would begin with the safety and health of the students at top of mind. I'll utilize my health and safety education degree to make sure that that remains a top focus. And there's no current school board member who has experience managing a multi-million-dollar budget, but I do. I started at the Postal Service as a letter carrier, just like the one that drives past your house every day. I worked my way up to the district office, to the area office, to the headquarters in Washington, D.C., and eventually to an executive. As the manager of mail transport equipment, I had a budget of $280 million.
What?
$280 million.
Wow.
And I purchased it's kind of a boring thing, but a necessary thing, kind of like infrastructure. So I had to make sure that we had enough of the trays that they put the letters in, the bigger tubs that they put the bigger size mail pieces in, sacks that they throw parcels into, and the rolling stock that moves the equipment all over the building and onto the trucks to go to the next location. I also had to manage the logistics. Because printers, by and large, who, no matter who owns the mail, the printers are the ones who are creating it, and they're largely in the Midwest area because land is cheap and labor is cheap. So a lot of mail, they need a lot of equipment there because they create the mail, but then it goes everywhere. So places like Florida and California that have a lot of population, they end up having all that empty equipment, but they don't have the printers. They don't need the equipment. So we had to do the logistics of gathering that equipment, packaging it up in a way that it could survive shipping, and then we arranged rail and over-the-road transportation to relocate it wherever it needed to be, primarily in the Midwest area. I mentioned earlier that I have a background in continuous improvement. It's actually Lean Six Sigma and continuous improvement, which is a fancy words that really just mean to make things better and not to wait until you have perfect. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Yeah. What can we do to make it better today? And we can keep working on towards perfect, but we don't want to wait for that because we might not ever have that plan in place. So I was delighted at a recent school board meeting, and if you ever want to go to one, don't go to the ones at night. Those are more of a formality, more the little votes and, but go to the workshops that occur during the afternoons. That's where you really get to learn what's going on. So at a recent one, they talked about operational efficiency. I wanted to stand up and salute because that's near and dear to another job that I had with the Postal Service, which was the manager of operations and integration support. So I was a liaison between these biggest mailers in the country, and now we're not just talking the person who print it, but the people who make the decision maker to AT&T and all the biggest companies in the whole country, and our mailing operations group, who had to handle that mail in an efficient way when it arrived from the mailers. So, the operations group would love for it to come in perfectly packaged, and if they had to spend, an extra $10,000 to do it, then, oh, so what? I got what I needed. The mailers, on the other hand, of course, would advocate for, I need as few restrictions as possible. I need to be able to do what works best for me, and if there happens to be an error, well, can't you just forgive me? So you had to kind of work together between them to come up with regulations that everyone would agree that they could abide by. So we were writing national policy, was working with the highest levels of the Postal Service, including the Postmaster General, making presentations. And I led a small group of just 4 people. And we worked with cross-functional groups where we would drill down into the problem, peel the onion, they like to call it, till you found the root cause of the problem. Because you might fix a surface, put a Band-Aid on a surface problem, and things got a little better, but you hadn't really fixed the problem. And in 3 years, we drove $475 million worth of costs out of the Postal Service. I cannot drive $475 million out of the school budget here because it is not $475 million. But I have to believe there are some opportunities here. I just have to believe it. And I did that without sacrificing service. I know the Postal Service has had some negative light cast upon it recently because of declining service standards, but when I was there, you had to make your budget and you had to keep the service standards, so I'd like to mention that. I also was a liaison on what's called a Mailers Technical Advisory Committee, so all these biggest mailers would come in and we would meet with them, and it was a formal thing we did once a quarter. So we worked on very complex issues. I know I hear other candidates stressing that whatever level of, I know how to work on complex issues. I'm talking about national level issues with huge stakeholders, so, and rewriting national policy. So I believe I'm qualified.
A question about something you said earlier.
Okay.
When you go to these school boards and you're sitting there watching, you're not allowed to speak? They don't take comments from the peanut gallery?
They do. When you arrive, you can go immediately to a tablet sitting there where you pick up the agenda, and you can indicate you'd like to make a comment and at what point and on what topic.
Oh, okay.
Rarely,
I've never been. So
rarely
I didn't know.
does
That's
anyone
interesting.
say anything. And then there's a second opportunity because you may have heard something now that you
Right.
want to step up and put your name in and have an opportunity to say something. Would love to see more people start to go to the meetings. I think we need to engage more with our schools. Of course, I'm going to say that because I'm engaging with the schools and I'm actually finding it interesting and some exciting programs, just things that they're doing that I think are phenomenal.
I was just reading the article in the newspaper about the school board. They recapped the last school board meeting. I said, they really get things done.
They do.
I was, pleasantly surprised. I never read about it before, and now I'm interested. So I read the article, and I was like, they work.
When is the meetings? The ones you are recommending?
I'd have to look at my calendar to give you the exact dates. They're on Tuesdays, so.
Same days as the night
Well, the
meetings?
one is held on the same day as the night meeting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, up on the third floor in the same building where the night
Oh.
meetings are held.
What building?
So it's the county government building, same one where you go, the tax office is in
Oh,
there.
okay, the main,
Yeah.
main
So,
county.
yeah, the main county building, up on the third floor, and someone can direct you if you're having any trouble finding it. So that one is very interesting, because they're talking about the very topics they're gonna talk about that night. And then at night, they group things into like 6 or 8 things at once, and they vote to pass that whole package, but you don't get to hear what they really are.
But they considered in the meantime
Yes.
how to get back and forth.
So if you come in the afternoon, you'll learn more about it. And then 2 weeks prior to that meeting, in the afternoon at 1 o'clock, same place, they hold an agenda meeting. So this is where they're looking at what might be on the agenda for the coming meeting. So I found that one pretty interesting as well.
I think
yes.
what you mentioned about, you'd be looking at the money, to see
Mhm.
if there's any savings. I don't think a lot of people are worried about the money going into the schools. What we're not happy with is the way the school board has been using our money.
Okay.
Okay, firing their lawyer and getting them involved in a lawsuit, which costs money, that did not go to the students or to improve their education.
Right.
The fraud that they lost.
Oh,
it was,
yes, the
okay.
700,000 or something.
Right, you know, now, how many students could that have, helped along the way? And then there was at least one more major money thing in the last, say, 3 years that I was like, what the hell are these people doing? I never hear anything coming out of that school board that tells me what things are happening for the students. It's when we had Lakeisha
Lashaka.
Moore.
Lashaka Moore talk about the high school program, we were all blown away.
Mhm.
It was so fabulous. But all we hear coming out of the school board are negative.
All
They need
you
better
see coming
publicity.
out of there. So that comes back to communication, which is one of the things that I identified in talking with the parents. That communication could be improved, two-way communications. And they have what's called Parent Square, which is an app where they can communicate back and forth. But a parent gave me an example. Her child, who's on an individual education plan, is in the band. And she simply reached out to ask, which days does he have band so I can make sure he brings his instrument? And the teacher responded and said he knows when he needs to bring it. But she's trying to, so she was upset by that. And so it's not huge things. It's not like no one's trying to communicate, but I think we could do some things that improve communication. Why can't she see his schedule? Why can't she just see that in the app so she would know on this day your child participates, on Tuesdays and Thursdays has band, on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever. Why can they not see that? So I've seen some opportunities for improved communication for sure. And there are, you probably see what the local media chooses to share is what you see. But there are other sources. I've found quite a few on Facebook where I'm learning a whole lot more about the schools. There's a Flagler school, parents of Flagler schools. That's a helpful one to get in touch with
I
what
think
the parents are
something
feeling.
needs to generate it more to the general community for the seniors, because a lot of times other people my age bitch about having to pay into the schools.
When they have no
whereas I'm a retired librarian, I can't think of anything more important, okay? But it's more community-based. I mean, you get the Observer, and they're really good about school sports, but that
sports,
you don't
that's what you
see
read.
any of the rest of it. And I'm more interested in, what are the science people doing? What are the, what are the
Mathematics,
English
yeah.
people doing? What are the trade school kids doing?
It's about communication, which you
Yeah.
said, it's all
Yeah,
about
so
getting
they
press
have
releases out
to,
to say, about even things
it's
that are
not just the
mundane.
parents, it needs to be
Right,
the
I totally
community.
agree. And, here's an interesting statistic, or I found it interesting. I'm a bit of a numbers geek. I like spreadsheets too, so go ahead.
Yay.
Go ahead and laugh.
Somebody's gotta do it.
Nerd alert.
Only
That's not me.
22% of the households in this county have school-aged children living in the household.
Right.
So the rest of us are footing a greater portion of the bill.
And I want to know positive
Yes.
things. I want to stop hearing
What was that
about the
percent?
waste of my money.
I'm sorry?
What was that percent?
22% of the households here have school-aged children living in the household. Might be going to public school, might be going to private, might be schooled at home, but that's the only statistic we could get to.
That's the next thing I was gonna ask. Out of that 22%, do they have a breakdown through socially economics, race, and or if that student is in public school, charter school, or public school collecting charter school money?
That's a level of
And then
detail I
charter
don't
school
think
gets
anyone
broken
has a
down to
handle on.
Private, you know, and there's all these other kinds of
Religious,
opportunities
But
to
the-
use those vouchers.
The race thing could be really important because of the book banning. You know, they're removing all of the books for, you know, black children or children that have,
Two dads.
gay couples, you know, and it happens. I mean, yeah.
So Kathy, she's got.
I have,
Yes.
I have like two issues.
Okay.
I worked really hard to elect a previous person to school board. I just want to know, do you have the spine to stay in? Because we don't want to elect you and then 2 months later you decide to leave like the last person that was there.
I hear you, and that's heartbreaking when you've helped to get someone elected. I don't want to go into my
I don't know what
entire,
the politics
my entire
are.
personal life or my entire postal life, but suffice it to say, we worked 80 hours a week almost all the time for 40 hours of pay, and at stress levels that would put even most men under the desk.
Okay, because I don't
So-
know what politics were involved with that or.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't even know who
Go
that
there.
was for sure,
I
but
just want to know, do you have the tenacity?
I'm in it to win it, and I'll
Okay.
finish the
Yeah.
job.
Okay,
Secondly,
There you go.
secondly, I find there's a lot of elderly here in Flagler County. And there's so many elderly I see on different apps that say they have nothing to do, they want to volunteer, if we could have like an after-school mentoring program, or
If I may.
even study, like to help with math skills. There's a lot of families that they're looking for tutors for their children. And we have elderly here that are good at math, good at writing, and that could set up like a room to come for after-school
Sue is a
tutoring.
retired teacher. She
If I
can.
may.
Great. And one other thing I just want to get out.
I would like to do that too.
In my
do it too.
previous
I believe they already offer.
hometown, we were number 5 in our school, in the whole country.
Oh, wow.
The problem was, our taxes were so high. And we didn't mind paying the taxes, but here was the issue. They had swimming, they had volleyball, they had this sport, they had that sport. And the basketball court needed to be refinished and all that, that's fine, extracurricular activities. The problem we had though, that each boy and girl had to share a book. Okay, so it was the mismanagement of funds,
Yeah.
okay? I don't mind paying taxes to help with the education of a child, and they can go swimming or band or this or that, which I agree with, the extracurricular. But they shouldn't have to share a book,
No.
and that's what upsets me.
Yeah, prioritizing where the money's
Sue,
spent.
did you want to share about?
Please, that is so important, what you just said.
Right.
Couple things. I started teaching in Flagler schools in 1990, and I believe it was through adult ed, Amy, shout out to Amy, I'm sorry, I can't remember your last name. She headed up the volunteer recruitment, and she was active, she was involved. She made my volunteers feel like $1 million. We did Valentine's parties for them, breakfasts, and it was amazing. But to your point about after school,
Tutoring and stuff, yeah.
I observed one year, it just got stuck in my craw, and I was like, what's going on? Because the kids that don't hand in their homework tend to be I don't want to say repeat offenders, but it's always the same students that don't, and it's always the same students that do. The vast majority of my students, because homework was a real big thing for me, just because of how the brain processes, especially in math. I read one time, or often, that when you teach math, a new skill, the brain has to see it like 7 hours later.
Mm.
And that gives it a chance to kind of,
Seed.
start
Marinate.
practicing it,
Yeah.
start,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
marinate.
Kind of like when we hear
Marinate.
something at night, we get upset,
And
we
in
go to
math,
bed.
if you don't get it by 5th grade, it accelerates.
Don't
So
even get
all
me
your
started.
basics, you
On
have
the-
to have the basics
The
first.
3rd, 4th, and 5th grade skills, I call them tools. I
Right.
had really good math test scores, and it
Right.
wasn't just 1 year. And it all boiled down to times tables, please. And guess who finally talked me into that? My lovely volunteer, Mr. Best. He was working with my kiddos that weren't able to do their homework or were doing poorly, and he kept saying to me, we moved up that year from 2nd to 4th grade, he kept saying, they don't know their facts, they don't know their times tables, Sue, they don't know.
Right.
know. He must, and I kept saying to him, I know, but I didn't know until one day I knew. And he said it to me, and I said, that's what it is. He was the one that made me, that was in spring, and I said, you know what, we're doing things differently next year. And from that point forward, when I made times tables a non-negotiable in my room, those
Or
scores.
order of operation. If you don't get order of operation, you can't do
exactly.
analytical
But think
to
about
not
the
trigger
times
anything.
tables. So my own children, when they learned their times tables, when I started quizzing them on their division facts, they were just there, like almost by osmosis. It's like once they own 7 times 6 is 42, I could say, what's 42 divided by 6, and they knew.
Right.
Why is that so important? Because we teach long division in 4th grade
Right.
with a single digit. Now, why was I such a crazy person about that? Because I knew what was coming in 5th grade.
Right.
So I am introducing a brand new skill that involves a brand new
Set.
algorithm, and it requires necessary tools. I had inclusion kids in my class. I had 100% of my students leave me with a 90 or better on their long division test.
Awesome.
Why was that so important to me? Because guess what they do in 5th grade? Now they introduce a double-digit divisor, which throws in that wonderful skill that everybody, even in here, used to love,
Algebra.
estimating.
Mm.
I can't think 52 because I don't know my 52 times table, so is that closer to 50 or is it closer to 60? I must think 5, okay? But that's a really, complex thing. But I have to tell you what I noticed. One night it just got stuck on me, and I'm like, I noticed that consistently my students, even though they were good students, the ones that were not handing in their homework were not scoring as well on their tests. 100% of the time almost, like across the board. And I would go into extended day after school, just happened to walk in there, right? And God bless the extended day people. They're working their butts off. There's very few of them in there. They have to maintain control and discipline. And guess what the kids were not doing?
Homework.
Even though they were told it's time for homework, keep it down, blah, blah, blah. These people, all the kid had to say was, oh, I did my homework, or I don't have any homework tonight. But the kids that were not in extended day, they were consistently handing in their homework. So I thought that is there, right there, we can catch a lot of those 70% if we can just get them that little bit of extra help. Maybe it would be through volunteers. Maybe there's something the school board could do to kind of like formalize that whole process. Like
I think there
Amy
is a
has done it.
process, and I say that because my neighbor had mentioned that when she first moved here, there's like a volunteer group for the county you can sign up to and learn about a number of organizations. So she signed up to help read to children and that kind of thing. And I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. Lee. So there was, when I went to the parent-teacher organizations, I mentioned that. I said, they said, well, it's not really a place at the PTO. It's really for parents, and they're doing little fundraisers to be able to do things for kids. You should go to the school advisory committee meetings. So I started doing that. But I mentioned at the PTO meetings I went to, there's a large community of retirees here with some great skill sets and some time on their hands.
Stick on that and
Right.
stick on the extended day thing, because I promise you, as somebody who watched it not happen, I thought, if this just happened, I know there's kiddos that are falling through. And you're right, once they get to 5th grade, forget about
Right.
it, because they're converting decimals to fractions, fractions to decimals, and they have to multiply them and divide them and do all these fancy schmancy things with them. And guess what? I'm working with a student right now, all right? She's a 5th grader. It's spring. She still doesn't know all of her 5s. I mean, this is her idea of knowing her times tables, and that ain't it. I said, how do you spell your name? She spells her name like that. I said, that's how you have to know every single one of your times tables. Otherwise, you don't have that fluency.
You don't have the basis.
It's not a tool that you can grab for, and
I
this
don't-
slows you down.
I only know this because, and like I said in another ad, this parent was reaching out begging you know, I need a tutor for my child, and she could only afford $25, you know, and couldn't find her.
heartbreaking.
I would help her for free,
It's
you know, but I
heartbreaking.
couldn't find her listing again in the app. And I said it would be great if we had a little
right.
classroom maybe,
That's right.
to, like, every Friday if you need special tutoring, you know, something.
And the
it would also
relationships.
keep our taxes low.
The relationships that they build, you know,
Yeah.
Mr. Best was a Port Authority police officer in New York City for his whole career, and he came to me, and he was with me for 26 years, every week, twice a
Wow.
week,
Wow.
all day. Mr. Best was the best.
He was the best,
And
yes.
that's my friend who just passed, and
Oh.
he would, he said, oh my gosh, Sue, and being an ex-cop, you know, he understands, like, you know, community relations, right? Black man, okay, in Walmart, kids are like running down the hall, Mr. Bass,
No.
they're like throwing their arms around him, and this is what he would do. The parents were looking at me like, who am I?
Yeah.
But what an impact, just that relationship. All of my volunteers, my kiddos, felt so safe with them, you know what I mean? And they knew that they had done something
And they do vet
profound
the
for them.
volunteers who come into the schools, correct? That you have to make an application, and so we would have to be careful of any thought of just providing a space and
It
having.
has to be,
It
and they
has
have
to
to
be.
pay the money to get the background check.
Yes, have it.
I
But I
wish
want
there
to
was a
come back
fund
to
for
something
that,
that Lee
but-
mentioned and Kathy also mentioned, in
Fingerprinting.
talking about taxes. And I think everyone in this room wants strong schools and understands that we want to have a community filled with people who have an education and can, you know, go to the businesses that are looking to hire and get a job. And we also want, let me explain something, that we started down the path of the 22% who have children of school age in their household. So the other 78% do not have children of school age. So we're all still paying taxes, and I welcome those taxes as long as they're being used properly and you know, the finances are being monitored correctly. So what do we expect from our government? All of our government, here in the county, in the city. Everyone may not live in the city, but anyway, what do you expect from your government when you give them tax dollars?
Service,
Service?
good
Just
service.
a responsibility for my funds. I want
Yes.
to know.
Accountability.
Yes, accountability.
I want to know where it's going and what they're doing with it, and are they getting the maximum amount of that dollar when they get that dollar?
And some transparency if you want to look into it yourself, so you can
Yes.
see the
Not only that,
records.
Safety, I don't wanna send my child to school and have a gun, you know, shooting,
Right. And that's certainly, safety
be
is
bullied on the
always
bus.
job one.
and bullies.
But the tax point I'm trying to make is the idea that you don't have full visibility.
Right.
And the reason you don't have full visibility on the tax dollars that are going into the schools now is that $17 million they had to set aside for the school voucher programs. So while the public schools have to show you the records of every dollar they spend, the minimum of like $7,800 that goes with each student who leaves could be $30,000 plus, depending on if the child has special needs that qualify them for additional money. You can't see any of that. There is no ability to look into those records. Here's an example. In the public schools, all the teachers have to be certified teachers.
Accredited.
Yeah, the
Accredited.
school has to be accredited, and the
And
teachers have to be certified. You move to a charter school, I believe they still have to be accredited, and the 50% of the teachers have to be certified. You move to the private school, there is no requirement at all. So that to me is an issue. And we, the taxpayers, are handing off the same amount of money that we hand to our public schools, where we know what's going on and we know it's certified and we know that the teachers we know it's accredited and the teachers are certified. So that's a problem for me. I believe parents should have choices, but I believe if those choices are exercised with public money, then there should be the same accountability with those programs, and there should be transparency into how they're using the money. And the public schools pay for some things those schools don't have to pay for typically, like transportation.
Does the school board have dominion over private and charter schools?
A little bit on charter, not on private. They're not tested. The children do not have to take the standardized testing. Some schools may choose to do it. I believe if you're going to take the public money, then you should have to meet the same standards that we, the public, should be reassured our money is going to actually fully educate these students just like they would have been. And as I said, I support the parents having a choice. I just think that we need a lot more accountability and transparency.
I also don't think they need quite as much testing as they get either.
in the public schools you feel are
Yeah.
over-tested.
Yeah.
I
It was
can understand.
almost, back in the day, one of the charter schools that shall remain nameless, but it's the one that did actually succeed. I always got the impression that, because I used to go to, I worked at a teacher-run school, so I was the person that went and spoke to curriculum once a month, and every school would send their coaches, like their reading coach. I wasn't a reading coach, but I went. And I always got the feeling that the coach from that school was almost, well, her boss told her to go, but I almost got this feeling like it was a voluntary thing. And that was from someone within our board. It's like they don't have to, but we love them because they come. In other words, they come and they take advantage of the training opportunities and the information that I'm bringing, from Tallahassee, et cetera. Whether it's still that way or not, that motivation.
Well,
to
you know how we
just
watch
be
those
better.
school scores? Like, we want to know if our county is an A or B, and then within it, if we're a B, who's an A and who's a B. And guess who's factored in on that? The charter
charters.
school. Not the private schools, but the charter school scores, which they don't have any control over. The school, the administration here cannot control that school, yet that school's score
It's averaged
counts into the average for.
For the
These are
state.
just
But
for,
wasn't
for the county, like.
For each county.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there is, so you could have a charter school that's pulling your school's
Down.
public
You
school
very
down.
well could. These are just things I've learned as someone who wasn't really involved in the
Yeah,
school.
and this isn't
There's a
that-
question in the
Don't they
back.
have the ability, though, to not take every student?
They
And
do
so
have the
can
ability
choose,
to
like,
not
yes.
take students
Yes.
if they find them to be a behavior issue,
Yes.
if the child has some
Needs that they
special
can't
needs that
meet.
they cannot meet, if if they just decide that, we'll hold Joey till we get his money, because there's certain days where the money comes in, and then we'll send him back to the public schools. There's a
You had a
question in the
question for
back,
us?
Well,
in the back.
You.
I just wanted to point out that when we were at the candidate forum that the Republican Club held the other week, every one of those school board candidates were saying that they believed in reforms
Yes.
for this program, because you, as a candidate now, really have no control over what the legislature does. I mean, you've identified problems, and because they want it to succeed, they've identified problems too, and are willing to.
And they went, the current school board members, except for the chair, all went to Tallahassee to express their concerns, and to be fair, the legislature has bills moving through that will tighten up some of these loopholes in the voucher program. So I want to give credit for that. How about in the back?
Hi, I'm Jim Ampley, I used to be the sheriff. So a couple of things. First of all, you're absolutely right, the school district is extraordinary. Like, all three kids went through the schools, they all went on to the top universities, Duke, NYU, and Georgia Tech, all got full rides.
Excellent.
And I don't think that's going to be your challenge, in my opinion.
Right.
The challenge is what I just heard on NPR while on my way over here, is that Democrats are fighting for good school, curriculums and teachers and all those things, all the right things. Republicans, like in every phase of our lives right now, are fighting a culture war.
Right.
So what they believe, they don't give two bits about the schools. And I'm sorry, they don't. What they have is this view, and they had an expert on this in NPR. They have this idea that our schools and our universities are somehow, whatever.
Indoctrinating.
brainwashing for a certain time. Now, the answer to the expert, they had a conservative person who was espousing this, that this, that's what the schools are doing. And the answer simply is that kids are changing. And that's what they're trying to do. Our kid, my generation, my kids' generation, is completely different. What they believe just intrinsically is not what we do. I mean, my daughter's married to an African American man. All her friends are, it's like you go to her house, it's the United Nations. These LGBTQ issues have been resolved by them.
Yes.
That's what Republicans hate, is
Yes.
that our children,
Are okay
to our
with it.
benefit, are much better.
Do you know
They're
why?
brighter, they're smarter, and they are more tolerant
Parents
than
and
our
teachers.
generations.
That's what we were
And
doing.
that's what they want to do,
Tolerance.
is put that back in the bottle. So that's, when you are campaigning, that's what you're gonna be fighting. You're gonna be fighting for what's best in the schools, and I think you should promote the schools, because everything you said is true, and I still have contacts in the schools. But all they care about is the culture war. And
Yes.
if you get a chance, I would like to talk to you about waste of money.
I'd love to.
The school security budget, which you probably, if you haven't read my article, you need to read my article in Observer,
I did.
where
That's good.
I indicated that this sheriff, who used to work for me, used to be conservative Democrat, and now became a Trumper, has increased our budget by 135% over 10 years. That means all the dollars that we could have for our infrastructure in our school districts
Went to
is going
the,
to all those crazy
Water.
things, and now he wants a helicopter. But in addition, school security, that budget has tripled since the time I was there. And I was the one who put SROs in every school when I was there.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
there are ways of doing things, and I hate this word fiscal conservatism, because they don't, it's just hypocrisy. It's just what you said, and I think that's something you should run on, is efficiency. You know, several people talked about it. We don't mind giving money to the school district, but we want it to be spent efficiently.
Right.
And that should be our counter as Democrats. You know, fiscal conservatism is an ideology. It's not a plan. You know, efficiency is a plan. You know, how can we do things better? You know, how do we get to point A to point B? How do we hire the best teachers? How do we have the best programs? Those are the things that we Democrats are talking about. But if you went to a Republican, forum, you would think you're talking about something completely different than what you're
Right,
espousing.
apples and oranges.
My view is they want to cut budgets. I want to squeeze the budgets. So they want to eliminate programs. I want to find ways to squeeze a little money out over here, which in a budget of multi-million-dollar budget you can typically find. To squeeze money from here so we don't have to cut that program because some federal funding got cut or the state didn't give it as much. And by the way, I saw where the state is giving more, at least for now, it's not fully decided, to education for this coming year.
The reason why this is all happening, the culture wars, is they did research, and they found that if you raise a Republican child, 99.9% of the time they will vote Republican as an adult. So that's why they're attacking the children right now. That's why the charter schools formed to begin with. Because they feel that our democratic values are being taught in our
All right.
schools with the homosexuality and all that other stuff. But
oh,
go on.
one more.
I find your choice of language, the conservative word, that's come up in our meeting. And more than one time we've said, well, who really are the conservatives now? Like, who's really trying to conserve, take, for example, democracy?
Yeah.
Let's
The-
start there. So
The parties have flipped.
I think that, at which they do, right?
Right,
But
it's happened
I think
before.
that that's a really important tack is like, I am a conservative person, and the reason why I'm conservative is because I believe in conserving what works, which I think when you spoke about incremental change as opposed to throwing the baby out with the bathwater, that's a conservative.
These are all
theory,
good
I-
questions, but let us remember, she's got to get in the office before we get to these concerns
But
they
she's
have.
going to be
And it's a
facing these
nonpartisan
questions.
election, so I have to be careful about some of these
And you're
topics.
gonna be,
Right.
but you're gonna be facing questions. And-
Yes.
And I think
And I
that,
will- I'm
you wanna
prepared to
be
answer
fluent
questions.
in what you stand for and what you think is gonna motivate, the
I want to
voters.
mention August the 18th,
Thank you.
because this election will not be decided in November, at least as it
Right.
currently stands. There are only
Right.
two candidates. Someone will win on August the 18th. So if you typically travel to escape the Florida heat and humidity in the month of August, please register to vote by mail. That will arrive 3 to 4 weeks in advance of the election, so you can cast your ballot and head on out. If you normally leave for July and August, you got to take an extra step. So you still register for vote by mail, but you reach out to the SOE and give them a temporary address. You cannot do a forwarding with the Postal Service and have it be forwarded. They cannot forward ballots. That's your process. Register to vote by mail, tell them if you need it sent to a temporary address.
What's that date again?
August the 18th.
All right, thank you. That's
you.
Cathy Moon. I'd like to thank everyone that's here today, and thank the people out there in internet world for having us in their homes, I hope. Once again, this has been Conversations in American Democracy.
Excellent.
you all.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kathy.
See you next week.
See you next week, everyone.
Next